everybody, and welcome to our event, Navigating the New Workplace, Practical Tips for the Future of Work. Thank you all for being here with us today. My name is Maggie Callahan, and I'm a project manager for Staples US Retail, and I've been working remotely and preparing for a new hybrid schedule, so I'm really looking forward to hearing tips for that transition from our amazing panelists today. If you have any specific questions for our panelists throughout the event, please scan the QR code on the screen to submit them. You can also find this link on the event page in Eventbrite. On behalf of Staples Connect, I'd like to kick us off and welcome our event moderator today, Catherine Rose, founding CEO of Wiser.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And thank you to all of you for joining us. And thank you to Staples Connect for bringing another incredible session to their community. I'm Catherine Rose. I am the CEO and founder of Wiser. Wiser provides small businesses and professionals with access to world-class experts who can help get them the advice that they need one-on-one to go forward faster in their business or career. We partner with Staples Connect to provide content and access for their community to our ecosystem of experts at a discounted rate. You can learn more about our partnership at staplesconnect.com/wiseher. Now, I've been a Staples retail member for many years, more than I probably want to admit, and I'm thrilled to be here today talking about some best practices around navigating the modern workplace. This is a huge topic, as so many companies are either opting to go fully remote, hybrid, or employees are just pushing back and saying, I'm not going back to the office. I've personally been working remotely for more than 20 years, but if you're just starting out on this new path, how do you manage it all? And we'll talk all about that today. But with that, I'm going to introduce today's panel. First, we have Parvati Ramachandran. She is the Senior Director of Human Resources for Staples US Retail and has been in human resources for over a decade across industries with international experience. Her role took a dramatic shift in 2020 as one of the executive task force members who had to respond to the safety and well-being of 25,000 plus associates through the pandemic. From planning large communications, developing protocols for teams across stores, distribution centers, and corporate functions, the last 16 plus months has been a whirlwind of learning and experiences and still continues to evolve. In her role as head of HR business partnerships for Staples Retail corporate functions, she and the HR leadership team have been developing a return to plan for Staples office associates. She's also a proud mom of an 8-year-old who had experienced remote learning all of last year and has returned to school for the first time in-person learning. Welcome. And I also wanted to introduce and welcome two of our top Wiser experts. First, Ileana Rojas. Ileana is an executive and career transformation, safety, and strategy coach. She's a DE&I catalyst, a best-selling author, and an international motivational speaker. She has 20 years of global executive experience in top Fortune 500 companies, leading and coaching professionals and businesses into success. Ileana has coached leaders across all levels and has delivered impactful coaching programs to over 1,000 professionals across the world. Ileana has been recognized by the New York Journal as one of the top 10 inspiring women to watch in 2021 and has been featured on NBC, Fox, and CBS. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Sarah Reif-Hecking. She's the founder of True Focus Coaching. She is a speaker, coach, and productivity and time matters expert with over 20 years of experience empowering entrepreneurs, small business owners, professionals, and executives to get a grip on time so they can get to the next level in their lives and their businesses. She teaches her clients how to achieve their highest priorities and professional goals. Welcome to everyone, and thank you all for being here. So I know this is a big topic, so we want to just kind of get right into it. So I've mentioned in the beginning of the session that I've been working remotely for more than 20 years, but I do remember when I first started how challenging it was, and I actually chose to do it, right? And so many folks out there were just kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool. So I'll start with you, Parvati. What do you see is the most challenging part of navigating this new remote or hybrid workplace for your for the folks at Staples?
Yeah, no, such a great question. Catherine, we are retail. So in-person collaboration is our thing. I mean, our customers walk into our stores precisely for that. And when I speak about my home office associates who had the option to work from remote, we are an extension of that culture. So all of a sudden, one March 13th, the Friday, we told the associates, okay, go work from home. And I mean, it was that mindset shift, which was probably the most challenging for them because they have remote working was not a thing. It's not our thing. So how do you shift that mindset at a drop of a hat? And that was the biggest challenge for us. And then all the other tactical challenges followed. I mean, setting up a home office. Where do is it a kitchen island? Is it my guest room? And then my kids are home because now school's going to be remote. And the environment wasn't helping either. People were running around getting toilet papers. How do I get my groceries? So there's so many external elements. And along with that, this big mindset shift, such a hard word, mindset shift that we had to go through. So that itself was the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, yeah. Ileana, I mean, I know you've coached a lot of clients through this. What have you seen as the most challenging parts of it?
I think a lot of what Parvati's mentioned are things in bigger or in smaller ways, but we've all gone through it. What I've seen most challenging has been creating that new routine. In the end, we're all, creatures of habit. Even if we don't feel that way, but we always fall into these routines. And part of that routine was, waking up, getting ready, dealing with breakfast, kids to school, and then jumping car, commuting from 10 minutes to a couple of hours in some cases. But you already had a routine that worked for yourself and for the whole family. And suddenly that routine crashed. So I think that the most important challenge that I saw that people started to face, even myself, was what was that new routine going to be like, and fitting for everybody now under the same roof, right? To make that routine work. And then it didn't work, and then trying to adjust again, and it was like an iteration after iteration. And then the other thing that I saw that became very challenging once the routine, quote unquote, was sort of established, was being able to, as a professional, being able to stop. Because now, before we were going somewhere, we had, whatever, 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever it was our time. But there was a moment when we were able to get back in our car, train, whatever transportation, and go back home. So there was a break. But being, in front of the computer, like Parvati says, in the kitchen table and the spare, whatever, wherever it was, you could just continue. And suddenly it was 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and you were continuing, working, meeting with people, having these conversations. So learning to stop also became a challenge. And I remember seeing data from McKinsey and other different consultants starting to throw data where they realized that people were working 25% more hours a week because we just couldn't find those places to stop. So definitely those two became a challenge. And to this day, although maybe the routine is a little bit more taken care of, again, quote unquote, definitely the stopping, being able to stop and say, now I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to close my computer and I'm going to turn into my family, me doing something different, is still becoming a challenge.
Yeah, and Sarah, Ileana touched on this whole idea of this routine and shifting. And as a productivity expert, what were some of the specific challenges that you saw during this process, and are still probably seeing in terms of productivity? I mean, maybe folks are working more, but maybe they're not being as productive or more productive.
Yeah, I love all of the things that have been said so far. And I think that, setting up the routine and the environment to be able to be focused and working when you want to be working, and then stopping working when you don't want to be working, has been the biggest challenge for most people. That, coupled with the uncertainty of, can I go back? Are we going to go back? Are we, everybody was sort of geared up this summer. Oh, we're vaccinated. We can have, business as normal, and then the Delta variant comes in. So I think that there's a couple of things. One is that clear, when am I working, when am I not working? What is my new routine? What is my new commute, even if it's just, a coffee cup from the kitchen to the guest bedroom or wherever your new office is? And then what's my stopping routine? And when am I really going to say, I'm leaving the office now? And how do I give that signal to my coworkers, that are many of which are remote, if not all, and also my family and animals as well, let's not forget them, right? So, because we know two of the biggest distractors are kids and animals, right? And one of the biggest things that gets in the way of productivity are environmental distractions. So I think you really have to get clear about setting up your work environment so that it is work friendly. And as you start to go into hybrid or commuting, how do you have that in both locations or all locations? And I think that's going to be the challenge for people as they start to migrate back and forth.
Great. Well, Ileana, I want to start with you on this next question too, because you had mentioned that people are creatures of habit, and as much as folks grumbled about their commutes before, and then they maybe grumbled about the fact that they were working from their kitchen counter, now people are kind of comfortable there, right? So, I mean, have you seen a lot of your clients and the folks that you coach? Have you seen them really embrace this work from home now, and why do you think that is?
Yes, definitely many of them have, and many of them are eager to get back into the office. And in a lot of ways, it depends on your personality style, right? Some of us, and I include myself, are introverts, and some are extroverts. And I have some extrovert clients that, you need that interaction. And it's not only via, all of these different platforms that we have today. Like, you need the physical being there, having the coffee chat. For us Latinos, having the hug, you need that physical, being with people. So although maybe there are some benefits of being home, you're still looking forward to maybe it's a couple of days being at work and being able to have those physical interactions. And then for others, we've finally established a place at home. We're good with interacting with others on a virtual perspective, and not necessarily need that, being in the physical place or in the location with other people. But it really has to do a lot, not all of it, but a lot with that personality style and how you feel more comfortable, that you've been able to embrace. And then the other thing that I've seen is what's important to you, your personal priorities, because it depends on, do you have, kids? Do you live with a cat? Do you, do you like to go out and do work out? And now you have time to go hiking and to take on the bike, or you have time to, play tennis that you never had time before. Whatever it is that you had from a personal perspective that was important to you to really feel that you feel fulfilled, not only from a professional, but a personal perspective, that's also playing in a very important part in these decisions, because now we're able to, even though we're working maybe 25% more, we're still finding the time to have those personal, that me time, to do the things that I want with myself or my family, whatever that is. So I think that's where the embracing from work from home or not is coming, is just being able to find the time to do things in the way that, I feel that I'm delivering my best for me, work, professionally and personally.
Great, thank you. Well, let's shift gears for a minute. So, Parvati, I want to start with you. So many employers are starting to say, oh, first it was like September 1st, then October 1st. Now they're saying, in February, January, whatever. But they're going to start requiring workers to come back part-time and even some full-time. And there's been a lot of news articles about this max exodus of workers, who have been required to come back. So talk a little bit about, the plan that you've kind of put together for Staples and just your overall vision of, your thoughts around requiring FaceTime, requiring folks to be back in the office, and, how Staples has kind of taken the lead on plans around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The core of all our decisions with respect to return to office has been one thing, and that's flexibility. And I mean, I don't think associates could have been clearer through this pandemic that what they were looking for is flex. And Ileana kind of, said a lot of things about that. Flexibility to make that decision, flexibility to decide when to disconnect, flexibility to decide what are my other passions. And I don't think we would have gone any other direction. So as a result of that, we actually went and asked our associates, what do you want to do? What is your perfect schedule? Is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Is it Wednesday? Is it 5 days a week from home? Whatever you choose. So we started with that. We asked the associates to think about it. And then as the next step, we actually asked our associates to talk to their team members saying, okay, as a team, what do we do? What works for us? What is my role? How visible should be my role in terms of coming to the office and having that in-person conversation? And the last step of that was one-on-one with the leader. So I've had the conversation with my team. I have had a minute to think about it. Now I would sit down with my manager and have that one-on-one conversation where the manager would ask, saying, okay, this is what the team wants to do. We've had a conversation. Now let's talk about you. What works for you? What kind of schedule should we be working around? And in the hope that we've created an environment of trust where an associate can answer those questions without being judged, saying, oh, am I being judged now? I'm going to be on Teams. The rest of the associates are going to be, no. So hopefully that's what we did. So we created that environment so we could have those conversations and have those very specific conversations with those groups that matter to you and that matter to your work and that matter to your role. So that has been our approach, and we've had nothing but good responses as a result of that. So
great. And Sarah, Dr. Raheki, I want to start with you on this as well, or go to you on this. And when you're looking at the overall productivity of teams, and it sounds like Staples had a good approach where they're asking their associates what they want to do and then encouraging this one-on-one. But as a manager, as a leader, you have goals and objectives that you have to reach. So how do you give and leaders some advice on how to coach their teams being productive in that, it could be a hybrid environment, right? Where some days you're home and some days you're in the office.
Yeah, really good question, Catherine. And lots of people are asking how do I measure productivity, or how do, should I have surveillance on my people? Should I be watching them? And what we know about that is that actually backfires. So in order to engage productivity and keep people productive, first of all, we know that remote workers tend to work 25 to 35% more. They're more productive. So and in order for that to happen, they need a couple of things. They need flexibility, they need trust from their managers and their supervisors, and they need really good communication and some sort of virtual community to make that work. Mm-hmm. So I think, my advice to leaders is do what Parvati is talking about there, because that's an amazing approach that Staples is taking, and really connect with your teams, make really clear about what your goals are and what the roles are for each individual member to reach that goal, and create that community around how does this team, meet that goal in a way that everybody's proud of. And that's how you're going to get people to show up. It's not about, checking how many hours they're on whatever software. It's about how do you engage them in what they enjoy and what they do well with in their work and what they produce as a team.
Great. And Ileana, Parvati, you mentioned that Staples approach, that sitting down with that one-on-one, and, does this work for you 1 day a week or 3 days a week? But Ileana, I know that you work with a lot of companies, and from the employee perspective, and I know I've had this too, although I've been working from home for quite some time, is there is that fear if you're the only one working from home, how do you make sure that you're still part of the team? And how do you talk to the employees about their role in this, and the leaders about their role in making sure everyone still feels like a cohesive unit?
That's a great question, and definitely a challenge that we've started to see and will continue to see. This is an ever evolving thing that might shift depending on the situation of the employee and of the different companies and organizations. But I think it's a lot of what Sarah mentioned, in coming together first as a team in the guidelines and setting like those what is and what is not, what they feel comfortable with in terms of as a team, in terms of interactions. So aligning on those, and then individually, I would say being present, and that's the same if you're in person or you are on camera, right? Just being present, being intentional about turning your camera on, about participating, about speaking up, about sharing your thoughts and ideas. I've seen a lot of people, even in person, in meetings, you sit in the back, you're with your computer or on your phone, and you're not there. It's exactly the same as not even being present in the room. So being present, I think it's a very important part of still being part of a team, still being considered, still being, feeling that interpersonal relationship strengthen within each person, within the team. So you have to be very intentional and stay focused in your interactions with others. A lot of people have said, but I don't know how to reach out to somebody. Well, you can have the chat and just say, can we do a virtual coffee chat? Because I would love to learn more about what you're doing. And you can do that the same thing you would do the water cooler conversation when you see somebody, at work physically. So there are things that you can definitely do on both environments, but you have to be intentional about being present and wanting to do that. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if you're in person or virtual, that interaction with others, that sense of collaboration is not going to be there.
And Parvati, talk a little bit about from the managerial perspective too, like how are you coaching your leaders to make sure that they're involving their teams, their remote teams in meetings and conversations and keeping them part of projects, and checking in with them?
Yeah. So small tip, but when we started working from home, one thing as a company we all decided is we would keep our cameras on. While yes, there is definitely fatigue, the fact that you want to look presentable, but it's been so interesting, just that journey, in terms of how we've all gotten so comfortable to share our spaces with people, share our pets, our kids who suddenly would pop up and do their cameo, and the fact that you can be there without makeup. So I think it has gotten us a lot more closer in that sense as a team. So keeping your cameras on, I think it's made a huge difference just from an inclusion standpoint. We've also started talking to our leaders that as we come back to some amount of in-person collaboration, think about those meetings where you had somebody remote and you chose to actually go on Teams. So you might be sitting in your office. There are 5 members. There are 5 participants in the call. And if you have one person remote, the other 4 goes into your office or cube and actually takes it on a Teams call. So there's so many good learnings we've had through this pandemic. I mean, I had to literally, Dr. Sarah was saying at the beginning, I can go on and on. So much that we have learned. And my hope is that we continue to leverage those learnings in terms of how to keep that inclusive culture on, making sure that that trust piece that I spoke about earlier, that environment where your associate is open to have that conversation in terms of if there is an issue with inclusion, the fact that I want to be remote, I'm uncomfortable to come to the office today. You should keep those doors open and continue to. We also purposefully created something called a leadership manifesto last year. And I'm trying to remember one of the few things that we spoke about in that manifesto is one was empowerment from a place of trust. Empower your team, empower yourself in terms of taking those decisions, be it in the remote, be it on site, doesn't matter. Trust was another piece associated with that. Authenticity was another. So we've tried to give some of these tips to the leaders so the leaders can continue creating that culture that we've learned through this pandemic.
Great, and for the folks in the audience, don't forget to click on that QR code and go ahead and submit your questions. We'll get to audience Q&A in just a minute. Dr. Sarah, I just want to talk a little bit about this, some of the challenges. Now, Parvati, you mentioned that there was a lot of learnings, but some of the challenges that and some of the learnings that you've seen, Dr. Sarah, through this, and how would you advise folks overcoming them?
Yeah, I've seen, as everybody said and Parvati said very beautifully here, there's great uses of technology And being on screen, interacting is a huge bonus, right? We don't necessarily have to drive an hour to meet somebody in person for a half an hour and then drive back, right? So talk about increases in productivity. The other challenge with that is that sometimes we feel like if we don't see them on screen, then they're not there. And you really, right, you really need to make sure that you're using your technology in appropriate ways. So sometimes it makes sense to have everybody on screen. Sometimes it makes sense just to send an email, right? Sometimes it makes sense to use the project management system to have that communication. So one of the things that I think is super important to avoid the fatigue that we feel when we're staring at ourselves on screen all the time, because that is just an unnatural act.
It is.
Right? Is again to empower people to say, hey, if you need to be off screen for a little bit, that's fine. But I'm going to assume if there's a square there, I'm going to talk to you, and you're here, and you're involved, and you're engaged, right?
Yeah.
And I know I did a training at the beginning of the pandemic, and I said to everybody on the screen, there are 50 people, look, I'm going to assume you're here, but if you need a break from watching yourself or whatever it is, then do that. And one of my best friends who's also a coach was like, Sarah, that was radical. Oh my God, like, you're going to lose your whole audience. And then she said, but you know what I did? I turned my camera off and I jumped on my mini tramp for like 5 minutes and I could listen better. Okay. So I think we really need to understand individual differences in terms of attention, activity, introversion, extroversion, focus, all of those kinds of things,
Right.
and get to know people. So I think that that's one of the challenges, is getting to know people individually and sharing, being able to, just like in the office, when, so-and-so never goes for coffee with us, but we like to bring him or her back a tea, right?
Right.
Same thing, we're all learning sort of how we do that virtually.
Yeah, one of my clients and I were like, we missed the walk and talks, because you used to, you just have your headphones or whatever, your earbuds in, and you would just go for a walk and you'd have a meeting, and now everyone is expected to be on video. So it sounds like one of the solutions is, kind of meet people where they are, right? We did have a great question that came in from the audience that will be perfect for you, Ileana. Someone mentioned that they find a lack of social connection working remotely. So give some tips for that, please.
Yes, that's a great question, and definitely something that comes up a lot in my coaching sessions. And I would say it goes back to this intention of building your network, on reaching out to people beyond the traditional, just like asking them things about work. Like, who haven't you talked to in quite some time on a little more personal note, that not that you have to be private, talk about private things, but just like learn more about, where they're going on vacations, what are they going to do in the holidays, maybe they just accomplished something, and be more, having those more personal conversations with people. First, with people that you regularly interact with, but also with people that you don't regularly interact with, because that'll help you, one, build those relationships, extend your network. And you don't know, like maybe in one of those conversations, something will come up where you find some synergies, where you might find some things that you can help each other with, or you can just share some best practices of something that they've done that you can apply back into your team. A lot of what Parvati mentions about all the learning that's happening, it's because of these sharing and these casual conversations of how did you manage, getting on camera or getting the kid out or whatever it is. It happens basically from those conversations, but it goes back to being intentional of setting the time. And I do hear from many, from many clients that they say, but I don't have the time. Like I would have to then do that like at 3 o'clock on a Sunday to do it. But I do feel that if you just carve 15 minutes out of your day, maybe in the next couple of weeks, and you just have that casual coffee chat, 1 or 2 in 15 days, it's definitely achievable, but you have to have that intention. Or maybe you go to a virtual networking, or people that are right now looking at us. It's just being intentional about carving those 15 minutes. It doesn't have to take more to have those additional conversations that are not necessarily work related. can definitely help in building that social connection that many people are craving.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that sometimes we feel like we have to do something additional for the social, and I think that in terms of the productivity, how we do things simultaneously can really give us back more time. So if you're in a group meeting, you can just purposely take the first 5 minutes just to have a little bit of coffee talk, just a little bit of chat. Like Parvati was saying, we've all seen kids and cats and dogs and whatever, but doing that intentionally and commenting just for the first couple minutes, don't make it go too long, but it is a way to just work that in kind of briefly, meaningfully, and to have that social connection and start to build those social ties.
Yeah,
Love that.
Yeah, and so Parvati, I wanted to ask you too, as an HR leader, it's switching gears just a little bit, but this, it was mentioned a few times about people working 25% more. So working from home, and even in a hybrid way, burnout can be a really big challenge. And the computer's right there. You just heard that like bang of your email or Slack notification. So how do you advise your leaders and employees and take the lead on folks and giving that some kind of balance, giving them that some tips on that?
No, I think I had to advise that to myself first, because we were working a billion hours. I think anyways, but there's this funny incident that happened. I think, I don't know, a few weeks back. These days, I don't remember time. Time is such a few weeks back, I was reading this email, and I probably was like 6:45, 7 o'clock. I read the email. I didn't understand anything. I reread the email. I still couldn't get it. It was a normal email. It wasn't anything complex. And I started thinking, why? Why is it so hard for me to read it? I started looking, just reflecting on, interestingly, decisions that I take after 6:30, emails that I respond after 7 o'clock, they had spelling errors. Like, I would get up the next day morning and I'm like, did I write this? So it was my body, my brain telling me, you're done. You do anything further, you might look stupid the next day. So don't do it. So I actually had this conversation with my boss saying, there's something. I mean, I think it's important that we listen to ourselves. Honestly, just listen to ourselves. Our body will give you, our mind will give you those indications. Listen to it. So I started consciously telling myself that 5:30, I would get up, disconnect, go for a walk. I mean, there are times I've come back and worked, but I would take that 45 minutes. And that walk now has become a walk with my husband and my little one. So it's our way of connecting, So there are things you can do, simple things. I'm not asking you to go to the gym and work out, but there are simple things that you can do. Could be a book, or listen to music. You know yourself, you have passions, you have interests outside work. Just bring in a little bit of discipline. And trust me, I'm a person who breaks the schedule all the time. So I'm trying to be as practical as possible here, but there are little things you can do. So be disciplined about it, and you will see a sea change. And take walks. Walks are amazing, by the way.
Dr. Sarah.
Can I add a little
Go
to
ahead,
that,
Ileana.
Catherine? Because Parvati, I'm right there with you. And one of the things that I realized in one of those moments that you perfectly mentioned, that I've been there, done that, is going back to impact, and realizing, like, asking yourself the question of the impact or this consequence of not reading the email or not answering it at that moment in time. At least that has helped me, being able to prioritize better, to say, yes, I could like give it 5 more minutes to try to answer the email, but the consequence or the impact probably is not going to change if I write it now versus I write it at 8 o'clock next day. And the consequence might be huge, to your point, of sending it now to sending it, at 8 o'clock in the morning, because it's not only the spelling mistakes or the grammar. I've sent emails to the wrong person, which is even worse.
Yeah,
like,
or the emotion, or there's emotion behind it that maybe shouldn't be there, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we have this saying in my family, no one's going to die, I mean, unless someone's actually going to die and you're a heart surgeon, like, that email does not have to go out because no one's going to die. I know, Sarah, you also have a lot of, kind of productivity tips around, this maintaining, and I really don't like to use the word balance, because with hybrid, for sure, and remote working, that's just kind of been thrown into the air. But integrating and making space for other things besides work. Talk a little bit about some of your tips.
Yeah, and I love to talk about work-life blend because it's a little bit different for every one of us. And, some of us really like long hours, some of us hate them. Some of us know that we can put 10 hours in and get a bunch of work done, or we could do it in 5 hours and get the same amount of work done and then be happier, right? So, and the examples that have just been given are great because it's just a really clear reminder that working longer doesn't mean that you're getting more done or being more effective. Mm-hmm. Right? So super, super important to not equate length or duration of work with more work getting done. I can give you examples of clients that got a lot less or got a lot more done in a small period of time when they set themselves up for success. So I think there's a couple of things. One is get really clear about when you want to be working and when you don't want to be working, right? Set that when, my start time and my end time, just like Parvati suggested. And I love that you now have this end of day routine, which is go for a walk, right? Because what used to happen when we went into the office is we had an agreed upon time that you would be in the office, and then we had agreed upon time when most people would leave, right?
Yeah.
So you have to set up that same sort of rhythm and routine. And I don't like to talk about the D word, the discipline word, because I think we can beat ourselves up with that a lot. So what I like to say is set up the rhythm and routines to pull you into doing what you want to do. So Parvati is being pulled into walking, right, with her family because that's the regular routine. And start to set up those instances and the rhythm that really fuels you. If you do better working super early in the morning till mid-afternoon, that's awesome. Just let your team know that. Let them know when you're going to be available and when your most productive times are, and set it up so you can overlap. So I think the most important thing is, I always start with all of my clients right here. When are you working? When are you not working? And then start to get really clear about asking yourself, am I working or am I not working? Because what happens is we're always kind of sort of working, we're kind of sort of not working, we're managing that text from the kid or the aging parent or whatever community when we're at work. And then in the evening, we're doing the opposite. We're trying to get that email done that we didn't get done because we were right? What ends up happening is you're busy all day and you're exhausted and you feel like you've gotten nothing done, right? So pick it. Am I working right now or am I not working right now? And you're going to get more done. You're going to go further, faster, and you're going to be less exhausted. So pick that clear plan for yourself and make sure that you're scheduling time for fun, right? Because here's the thing. If you don't put fun in, then you're going to accidentally do it during the day and it's going to feel like a guilty pleasure. And then you're not going to get all the good stuff, right? So you want to consciously put fun in your week so that that actually can be a really good reason to work a little bit harder, shut down, and then go do it.
Yeah.
So those are, I think, the most important things. When are you working? When are you not working? And then when are you doing your fun? Get that in there.
So I want to talk a little bit about, this whole idea of, in some ways, like this constant training and retraining or whatever of our brains, of our routines, because I think that, some folks, maybe a little bit older school, right? They've been in the office forever. They were thrown out of the office for COVID, and now people are back. And all of a sudden it's like, everybody has to be back because that's how they're used to it. Even this was just a blip in time. But as we see that, with Staples and with other companies, it's not just a blip. People, I think what it did was it really shined a light on the fact that people want more flexibility. They can work from home. So, Ileana, talk a little bit about how you've helped leaders kind of accept this flexibility and this remote or hybrid working, and how were you able to get them to kind of understand this new way?
And yes, that's a great question because I think a lot of leaders have experienced it themselves. I mean, we've all experienced some kind of everything that we've been talking about. So it's easier to have those conversations because they see the effectiveness in the productivity that Sarah mentions and that Parvati has mentioned also, right? They've seen it in their teams. They've seen it in engagement levels coming up. They've seen it in all these both tangible metrics and then intangible, just seeing people, feel better and be better. So those leaders, they're more curious about how can I continue to do this and how can I make it better. And for those leaders that you mentioned, still feel that this was just a moment in time, but the right way is going back. It really goes to understanding what the goal is. What is their end goal or end objective from a business perspective that makes it so important for having everybody back in the location to be able to accomplish the goal? Because when you talk about what that objective is, and then all the different strategies or tactics or plans that can be put in place to be able to accomplish that goal, then maybe that sparks the conversation, because now you're talking to that same objective. And like with any plan, you can have many ways of accomplishing a goal, but you need to be clear on what that goal is first. And when we start those conversations, what I've realized is that sometimes that goal is not even clear. It's just going back to a way of doing things because that's everything that you've known. But when you start to asking, okay, what do you really want to accomplish? Then that's where the waters get very muddy. And then that then sparks a different conversation of, okay, before we move everybody back, then let's start with understanding what it is from a goal perspective that we want to accomplish as an organization, so that then we can start offering different options and plans on how to accomplish that. But then the goal is what might not be the right or not be clear on what people want to accomplish or leaders want to accomplish.
Great. And Parvati, does Staples have any like specific, training things that they're doing with some of the leaders that will assist them with this shift?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As we talk, we are working with Franklin and Covey in terms of, so what we're doing is we're bringing some leaders, we're bringing all the leaders actually, any leader who manages teams, we're bringing them in small group discussions, and we are having precisely this conversation saying, okay, so now what do we do? How do we lead these teams? What are the conversations we should be having? What should be the intent behind those conversations? I mean, I know we spoke about resignations. More than ever, our associates are asking this question: what's my sense of purpose? Why am I working for this organization? What is my role, and how is my role contributing to the bigger sense of purpose? And to what Ileana said, as a leader, you have a responsibility of clarifying that and having that conversation with associates, saying, this is why we exist, this is the goal, and this is my team, and this is why my team exists. And you being a team member, this is why you exist, and this is how your role contributes to the bigger sense of purpose. Sense of purpose, I think, has become more important than ever. So, and again, just from a learning standpoint, I think that needs to be etched in every employer's head. It is important to clarify that. And leaders play this very special role. I think of them like a link in a chain, which goes back and forth. They are a link between the associates and the organizational goals, and they're also the link to be the voice of that associate to go back to the organization. So they kind of complete the loop for me. So leaders need to start understanding that importance, and that's been our uber focus. And how do we help our leaders to understand that their role and the importance of their role?
Fantastic. Dr. Hacking, do you have anything specific to add to that too?
Yeah, I love that, because here's the thing that we know, that when people are engaged in things that are meaningful and important to them, they're more focused, they're more productive, it's easier for them to do things. So if you're leading from that perspective and you're starting to also think about strength-based leadership, right? Are your people doing things that are in their zone of genius and in their strengths, and that are meaningful and important to them? Your organization is just going to fly. So really, really important. Even when I'm working, one-on-one with people and they tell me their goals, I always am saying, Why do you care? Why is this meaningful and important to you? Right? Because otherwise it's going to be really hard. And we need to figure out what your why is here so that we can get you enrolled, so that we can get you moving, we can get you in motion.
There's some great questions coming in from the audience, and those folks out there watching, please do click that QR code and send in some questions. But I will start with Ileana on this one. Someone asked, I would prefer to stay remote, but my company is encouraging a return to office. How should I handle this? And I'm going to say encouraging because it sounds like they're being forced back. So.
I think it starts with a lot of what the things that we've already said, and having first those open and candid conversations with our manager or whoever you feel comfortable within the company, having the conversation, because sometimes it might not be the manager, sometimes it might be somebody in HR or somebody in talent management, like somebody that you feel you can have that open conversation to understand, go back to that objective, like what is the expectation of your role, and sharing your expectations from your perspective on what you're trying to accomplish in your professional growth and the impact that you want to create for the organization. And that way will lead to trying to match the best. Maybe it's not the current role that you will continue to do, but maybe there's an opportunity to do something different that will match both, your skill set, the strengths that Sarah was talking about, and the impact that you can create for the organization. And that could then evolve into a completely new career or a completely new role within the organization. But it does start with having that conversation, because like I always tell many of my clients, if you don't speak up to what you want, people are just going to assume, and then they're going to make decisions for you. And that's not good for anybody, because then that impacts, your engagement, your performance, all of those other things that have been shared. You really need to feel that you feel that confidence that you can speak up and say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm expecting. And how can we find some solution between the organization and myself or your manager, whoever, to help you get to that place that works for you.
Parvati, Dr. Sarah, do you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, I do. I think the other thing that's really important to know is that sometimes people are just in this routine of you're supposed to be in the office, right? That we mentioned before. And I think that if you don't want to go back, just like Ileana said, have a conversation and ask why. Because sometimes I've had conversations with executives that I coach, and they're saying things like, well, this person needs to come back in. And when I say why, they go, oh, that's a good question. I had one guy who wanted his assistant in 5 days a week. Well, he was only in 3. Why does she need to be there 5?
Yeah.
Right. And she does better work from home. So I think it's a large part of it is return to this old habit sometimes and how work is supposed to be. And I think it also depends on the culture of your organization. And if you've always been an in-person, face-to-face kind of organization, then people are learning to trust. And to have that conversation, I actually heard somebody say to me the other day, I went in for those 3 days and nobody else was in those 3 days.
No one was there.
And then I actually said to my manager, wow, maybe we should coordinate. And my manager said, wow, that's a good idea, right? So don't assume that management really is doing something because they're, being dominating. They might just be on this automatic pilot. This is how we've always done business. So now we're going to go back, and you can help engage in the transformation of the workplace by asking some good questions.
I mean, I just have one thing to tell, because to that friend who asked this question, honestly, the amount of open requisitions these days you see, I don't know why your manager won't have that conversation with you. But so give the manager a chance, have the conversation. And I think, you never know the surprises and if it doesn't work, write to me. We have tons of open requisitions.
Fantastic. We have another question here. Any ideas, and I'll direct this to you, Dr. Sarah, any ideas for staying organized when navigating between two workspaces. I know you actually wrote an article for Staples Connect on this very topic. So talk a little bit about those tips that you gave for being organized between the home and the office.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One, you want to have both your environments set up, right? So you want to have everything you need at each desk or wherever it is, your kitchen table. But if you need a full screen monitor, a big monitor to be able to function well, then you want to have one at home and one at work. And you want to talk with your company about that. The other thing is get really clear about what your command central is, right? And I don't know about you guys, but like I had to dig out that commuter bag that I used to have, right? Go back and forth. Even I've been working out of my house for close to 20 years, but you want to have that command central bag or backpack, whatever it is, that everything fits, your chargers go there, anything that you might need is going to easily go from one place to the other, anything that you need to haul back and forth. So it's a no-brainer, right? So you don't have to think, oh, geez, I always forget that one charger. Well, get two chargers, have one in your place. Right? Buy an extra one, keep it in your backpack, right? Because those are the things that really slow you down,
right?
Take the air out of your energy for the day. So have that command central, and then plan for the days that you need to be in different locations. You're going to have different needs, right? And we forget this because we're so used to just taking the coffee into the desk, right, from the kitchen. It takes a little bit of extra time to like put your shoes on and grab your coat and, grab your bag and get into the car. And then who knows what the traffic's going to be these days. So do some planning, and also know that on those days, you're going to have to take care of family members differently as well, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes we forget about the broader differences when we're commuting as opposed to being home. So you want to really just take a few minutes and think through, when I do have to go into the office, what does that mean for everybody else in my life before I go in and when I come back, and then have your command central. And just know that both kids and animals are going to need more support as you start to commute. They just are. So plan for it. They're not meaning to be a pain in the butt. They're not needy. They're just animals and beautiful human beings that need to learn a new circumstance. So just set yourself and them up for success with that.
And Ileana, I'll send this next question over to you. So this is huge challenge, multitasking. So they find themselves challenged with multitasking during virtual meetings. If I'm not engaged in the discussion for even a moment, I find myself completely lost. So talk a little bit about some of those, some strategies to keep yourself focused. Because as I think it was Dr. Sarah, you mentioned that, you're looking at yourself and your screen, and it does get exhausting. So, your mind kind of wanders and that kind of stuff. So Ileana, talk a little bit about some of those strategies.
Yes, multitasking, the thing that we all wanted to do several years ago, and now we've heard that multitasking is actually not necessarily as effective as we thought, because your mind still can't handle with all those things, and then you send the wrong email or you don't check it twice. So definitely, going back to being more focused and doing one thing at a time will get you to do more things, like Dr. Sarah has been mentioning. And one of the things, if you have, your one screen or your two screens, is to only have open those things that you're working on. I know that I catch myself sometimes with like 10 or 15 tabs open because I'm like, I don't want to lose all of these things that I'm working on. But then I try to at least minimize them so that they're not right there in front of me, so that I can keep just focused on my screen where I'm watching, myself and others, and maybe the one where I'm taking notes. And that's the only thing that I have open.
Fantastic.
So again, try to be more intentional in terms of not having all these other things around you, because you will be tempted to, watching the clock or answering whatever it is on this side. So minimize those clearing those spaces.
Thank you. We're almost at time, so I did want to kind of run around just really quick and talk. Parvati, if you could start, just give maybe one or two tips that you would suggest our audience take away from today's talk.
you know your needs more than anybody else. So I think you need to ask the question to yourself, what are your needs? Where do you need help? Do you need help in scheduling? Do you need help in hybrid? Do you need help with your goals? And have those conversations. You just need to ask for help and you will get the help. So don't assume the help is not going to come your way. Employers are struggling today to get all these answers. And I was thinking, I don't have all the answers because we are still evolving. So it's probably not going to be a magical policy from your employer, but you can actually help your employer in terms of what your needs are so they can help you back. So ask for help and good luck with everything.
Fantastic. Dr. Sarah?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things is to get really clear about engineering your environment, right? Set yourself up for success and have a plan. Okay. And it doesn't mean plan every moment in your day. What it means is once a week, sit down and say, how do I make the puzzle pieces work? What really needs to get done? Am I commuting this week? Am I not commuting this week? Is my partner commuting this week? Is my partner not commuting this, right? Are my kids commuting? All of that, because it's going to keep changing. So planning, and also set your environment up for success. Your environment predicts about 80% of what you're going to do.
Fantastic. Ileana, close us out.
Over communicate, or at least it might feel like you're over communicating. A lot of what Parvati has said and Sarah has said, ask for help, share, don't assume, like make those connections. So communication is going to be key, and it's one of the biggest barriers to this working or not working. So definitely that, and understand what's important to you. In the end, from a personal perspective or a professional perspective, if you're not prioritizing on what's important to you, it will get the best of you, and you will not be accomplishing the goals that you want. So those two things would be the way I close.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for this wonderful discussion. I see Maggie from Staples Connect is here, and I know she's got some announcements. And then we will see you all another time. And again, thank you all to the panelists, and thank you for Staples Connect for hosting this incredible conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. I know I learned a lot with the great tips that I definitely want to use. I'd like to thank everybody, to our panelists and Catherine and all our guests for being here and sending out some great questions. So we will be sharing out today's event recording in email in the next few days, so you can look out for that. And I also wanted to make sure everybody visited staplesconnect.com/working. We regularly share some really great resources and solutions for working from anywhere, including articles by both Ileana and Dr. Sarah. And a reminder to check out wiser.com, where you can connect with thousands of different experts from around the world in areas like business planning and career growth. So thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.